What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Sword of Convallaria. Now, we're going to be getting into a beginner's gear guide. I wanted to help you guys out with giving you at least some of the knowledge that I have about gear and give you some recommendations on some pieces that I feel like would work. Now, we are going to have more in-depth videos coming for turrets and, of course, for weapons, really primarily the SSR weapons, because those, one, are a little bit more random. They are, again, a lot more in-game, and they do have a lot more value. So I have videos coming for those things a little bit more in depth as I get a more expansive roster, because it is going to take me a little bit to get those as a free to play, but we're just going to jump into it. Now, the first thing is, guys, is understanding what exactly your character is scaling off of. How do you figure that out? How would you know, right? If you click here in the bottom left, this will tell you all the stats that you have to consider with your character, which is attack, which is physical attack, magic attack, physical defense, magic defense, your health, and then I think it's like speed movement, right? And that's something that's really important to understand, because then you're going to essentially have the foundation to being able to understand how to properly build your characters. Now, the other things that affect your stats is going to be obviously your levels. So levels are going to be huge for your overall stat gain, base stat value. And then your skill tree is also going to be very valuable as well. And the other telltale too is that whatever character you look at, they will have more stats going into that respective thing that they scale off of, which, for example, with this character, she scales more off of physical attack. So you see there's a little bit more emphasis in the stat 27 to 19 on what she's getting from physical attack to magical attack. Same thing with the defense. 8 defense for physical, 6 for magic, right? So just always look at that as a telltale. Very, very clear indication. Now, their other component is obviously going to be gear. Now, I want to break down each slot so you actually understand how these slots work. But for the first slot, which is going to be your weapon slot, the weapon slot is only ever going to have, as far as the game is right now, is only going to ever have the stat that they scale off of, as far as the attack damage. So for this character, hers is going to be physical attack, which you see here, which is 294. It still will have physical defense and magical defense, but again, more emphasis in the physical defense and then the respective health count, right? Now, if we take a look real quick and I'll go to a magical unit, you will see the respective opposite. So for example, my barrel, hers she has a 1276 magic versus her defense, which is 769. And then when we actually go and we look at her gear piece, on the slot, it's only magic attack, right? And then less emphasis in physical defense, more emphasis in magical defense. So it just makes it very easy to understand what stat value you're really focusing on in that first slot. And again, it's just really context clues that makes that super simple. But, just wanted to kind of point that out. Now, we're going to get into the defensive piece. The defensive piece can vary. It can be a couple of different things. And I want to mention what kind of items you can place here. You can place either chest pieces, mask, armlets, necklaces, potions. It's a whole different slew of things that you can place here. But the most important things is to categorize these items based off of, really, I would say 2 things, right? So it would either be a item that's going to be a turn-based thing. So it's going to give you a usage number. So for example, like this potion right here that's on my priestess, only one-time use for combat, but you still get the stat value gain here, right? Whereas the piece that's on my Leonid is going to have just a passive ability, which he just uses for the entire duration of the fight. Now, the important thing to understand with this slot is that as far as the stat values, they're always going to be the same amount or equivalent value of physical attack, magical attack, physical defense and magical defense, and then the respective HP count. So if you see here, physical attack, magical attack, 84, physical defense, magical defense, 23. And this does apply to higher rarity pieces. If you look at any of these pieces, they're all the same in that way. So what exactly does that mean? That means the most important thing isn't necessarily just the base stats, but the actual passive ability that that piece has, which I'll give you guys some recommendations at some point, right, in this video. Make sure you stay tuned for that, right? But that's going to be the more emphasized thing. Now, the very last slot is going to be your tarot card. So gearing in this game isn't super crazy. You got 3 slotted pieces, 2 of which you have to focus just the passive. Now, when you go into the third one, you're not just focusing on passive abilities, but you also have accessibility to additional stats. Now, let me move my camera down so you guys can see this. Now, this right here above my head is actually going to be stats that unlock as you level your piece of gear. And this is going to be really important because this is going to give you that value or extra value when we're talking about fine tuning. So turrets are going to be the main gear grind in the game, right? And a lot of that has to do with the additional stat values that you can get. And the one thing about these stat values that are going to be a lot different than the other values in the game, which have all been flat base stat values, there's percent values here. So that's where this is going to completely change the game for a lot of players and what their unit is able to do. And then, of course, the fine tuning of this as you leveling it up is going to then, of course, make it more profound as far as the value of that piece. Now, of course, like I said, you have base stats, you have your passive, and then you have these freaking extra abilities or extra stats that you're able to gain as well, right? Now, with that being said, that's essentially your weapon slot, your defense slot, and your turret slot, right? Now, we're going to get into a couple of different things as far as some pieces that I would recommend. Now, we're going to start off with the chest pieces or defensive pieces. These pieces are going to actually be, for example, on my Leonid. This one is a pretty basic one, which I really like. It's a 5%, which can go up to a 6%, if I'm not mistaken, HP increase. So it just increases the max HP. It's very, very basic, but it does make your unit more tankier. So this is a really good starter piece to invest in. And it's easy to build, right? You're not really losing much. The only thing is obviously like taking it up to, you know, level 30, 40, 50. Like that's kind of one of the things you might want to do a little bit slower to see what other pieces you get. But this is still a fairly good piece. Like I said, throwing it on your tankier units would not be a bad idea. This piece right here that I have on my Weiwei, this one is actually going to have a 50% chance for her to be able to dispel oh, sorry. No, I'm lying. A 50% chance for her to be able to gain 2 buffs when she's healed. So this is a really, really good ability that's really going to help you out. Like, for example, she might get attacked. She might get, like, you don't know. So it could come in handy. I kind of like it because it just gives her a little bit extra on top of what she does. But again, this is what this essentially does. I would definitely recommend it. It's come in handy for what it's worth. One that I have on my Gloria is a vial. So this vial actually gives you the opportunity every 4 turns to apply to one enemy 2 debuffs. So for all the buffing that she does, I was like, why not give her a little bit of debuffing? So I kind of like this piece, but you can put this on a more debuff oriented unit. And it does give a lot of value with the base stats that it gives as well. The piece that I have on my barrel, this piece is actually going to be a minus 20% damage or magic damage as far as taking a hit from a magic user. And this is going to essentially be on a 5-turn cooldown. So it will reactivate every 5 turns, but it's just kind of nice to reduce some of that damage incoming because yes, magic damage does a lot to other magic users. So again, same thing with physical, but it's just kind of nice to mitigate one of those things, right? Then of course, the potion that we have right here, this is really nice. I felt like to have on someone that you typically might have moving around by themselves, if not like your priestess or your healer. I like this on my healer because she can heal with this. It does not take up a turn, and then she can still use her skill. This is only a one-time use though. It is technically counted as an item, which is kind of interesting mechanically with this piece of gear, but it is an item. So you can use it as an item and then you can still use your skills, which is really nice. Then we have the magic hat here. This is going to be a magic defense increase of 12% at max capacity, which is really nice. Again, that's going to be probably on more like your mages and stuff like that. I mean, it's just very obvious. I have it on the wrong unit, but again, after I had translated it and I figured out what it was, I was like, oh crap, this is on the wrong dude. So yeah, really, really good piece for those kinds of units. So, you know, just kind of take that into consideration. And then the last piece that I have on my Meisha. So this mentions there's something that you'll probably see in translation that'll say health state. I think that actually is correlated to full health. So I think when the character is at full health, she actually takes 5% less damage when she gets hit. So this is actually really nice because then you run that with like a healer who can constantly put you back up to your max HP value, which is constantly reactivating your set, right? So this piece worked extremely well. Really, really like it. Now, one rule of thumb I also want to throw in there as well, guys, is pieces you want to stay away from. It's going to be pieces, and this applies to, I would even say and argue, in this game mode specifically, not so much in the conquest because that varies a little bit, but for just your regular content clearing, story clearing content, stay away from pieces that don't have passives, right? These pieces are great for the stat value, but they're not good long term because they don't have an actual passive ability to give your character. Now, if you don't have anything else, sure. But if you have something that has a passive ability that can work on that unit, give that to them instead. Do not invest in that. It's a waste, right? And again, you can disassemble those pieces, so I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, for the most part, this is the pieces you want to stay away from, right? But that's going to be for your chest. Let's move on to the weapon. So we're going to start out with the axes. Now, the axes that I have, the first one, this one's going to be in health state, which I think is full health. This is going to be a attack increase of 6%. So this is going to be quite nice. Again, when you think about the relationship of healing, like this character, for example, she's able to self-heal. So this ends up being a really nice piece that you could rock out on her. And it would go kind of crazy. Not going to lie. A really, really good piece for her. The next one that I actually have that I did start to invest in, which I liked a little bit more because of what it does. It has an 80% chance to dispel one buff from a target, and then it has a 2-turn cooldown. I really like this one because I was like, yo, that's kind of nice. Like, especially because of how, I hit, and using this character, she's able to get rid of 2 turns in one go with one of her abilities that she uses. So it literally makes it to where, like, by the time she gets back into her 3rd turn, she already has it cooled down, which is kind of cool. But again, that does become very helpful when fighting like in-game, or not really in-game, but more harder content, because these units are going to start having buffs and things of that nature on them. So being able to strip them, 80% chance, not bad, right? And then the very last one, which is the Highland. This I think is a little bit more specific to having high ground, if I'm not mistaken. This is going to be a critical strike increase of 5%. So this one is okay. I feel like I would need to do some more testing with it to see its value a little bit more. But I will say, like I said, the very upfront ones was like the max health 6% attack increase, and then the 80% chance to dispel a buff, which seemed really, really good for this slot. Now, as far as spears go, there's quite a bit when you're talking about like potential options. This very first one is going to be nice. This is when you're attacking shield units. You're going to get a 10% attack increase. So this one could be quite useful, again, when you're using these style or type of units to attack units with shields. Then you have this one right here, which gives you a 6% increase to your health, which, like I mentioned before, it's just going to make your units more tankier. So kind of went for that on my Leonid, for example. This one is actually going to be quite interesting because this one is actually, if the target is afflicted with 3 or more debuffs, you will deal 3% more damage. Not necessarily the most worth at base value, but I feel like the more that this gets invested, it's actually going to be quite nice and probably a little bit better on teams that you could for sure know you're going to be debuffing, because otherwise it's not really going to be that valuable, right? Then this one right here, which is another one that has stats out of the silver or the rares, this is actually going to be giving you a physical defense increase of 4%, which again can go on your tankier, physical base units, right? So the other ones don't have value as far as a passive, so that's going to be that for the spear recommendations. Now, as far as the swords go, the very first one here is actually going to be allowing you to do a number to movement based units, so you'll be able to actually prevent some of their movement, and then with that you'll also be able to deal 9% more damage to those units. So that's kind of what this piece does. The next one here, which I actually have equipped on my Meisha, which I kind of like, is a frontal attack, actually actually does 10% more damage. She does a lot of shield pushing, so that's what really works well for her. She's like typically walking straight up to somebody and I'm pushing right back where her shield push. So that ends up being really nice for her. And you get a lot of value out of that because I feel like she's typically able to attack front, you know, so just kind of keeping that in mind when you're rotating around a character, trying to pick a side. She does get that scaling from that with that. This one though is going to be for the opposite, which is going to be if you're back attacking, you get a 12% critical strike rate, if I'm not mistaken, increase. So this is going to be really, really nice for those that like those more, you know, kind of getting stabbed in the back. That's essentially what that is, right? And that's going to be really good for, like I said, probably some more of your movement characters that are a little bit more crit rate focused. So that's going to be really nice for them. And then this very last one here out of the silvers is going to be just a physical attack increase. So this is probably going to be your generic option, probably the most efficient go-to for most people, especially if you don't have like a clear idea of what you want to like build a unit as yet. This one is definitely going to be a really just solid go-to. You can't go wrong with extra physical damage. So that's going to be that for the swords. Okay, so as far as bows go, with the bow that I was using prior to my SSR, this one was a if there's 4 tiles or more that you have a gap between you and the opponent that you're hitting, you get a critical strike increase of 5%, which I found to be quite nice considering that the archers are a little bit more critical strike based. Then you also have this piece right here. So before you attack, you actually are able to do 12% damage ignore. So this is going to be good on like some more of your more tankier units with ignoring defense. So a 12% ignore defense is actually very, very powerful. I wish I would have had this piece initially, but I didn't. I actually got this more recently, but this is still a very, very solid piece. And then the very last one that I would say that actually has a stat on it, this one is just a 4% critical strike increase. Obviously that will go up as you know, invest in it, but that for what it's worth is just kind of the base values. And those would be the recommendations for the pieces for your archer. Now, lastly, we have our staves slash orbs. This is going to be for your magic users. The first one is going to be for your priests, 100% for your healers. This is going to be a healing efficiency is increased by 8%. Now, this could also be on some other units that we might get along the way that also might have some healing abilities. So that really all depends. Right? Then, of course, going on to my barrels piece, this is going to be when hitting a single target, she's going to get a damage increase of 8%. So again, that's kind of nice for what she does. One of her main abilities I like to use, that's one of her lower costing abilities, is usually it's a single target, so it does really well with that. And then, of course, one of the last ones is going to be one that is a little bit more emphasized on magic attack damage increase. It's 2% at base, but it does go up as you invest in that. So those would be some of my recommendations. For the damagers, it would definitely be between these two pieces, but for your healer, if you can get this piece at all, like this piece is absolutely amazing. It might take you some time because it's like the only one that I've gotten as far as like the type of gear that helps out healers. But yeah, really, really solid piece. Highly recommend. So that's going to be that for your first slots. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is going to be the turrets. I feel like with the turrets, the best thing you can do as a beginner, because I feel like this is a little bit more of a thing that you'll be focusing in an advanced guide as far as like fine tuning it. Definitely focus on the base stats and obviously the passive the most with these pieces. And then worry about the subs later on, at least for the TW version. I feel like once we're on the global version, you'll be able to kind of indicate and focus these a little bit better. Now, if these are SSR pieces, then definitely translate and try to figure out what the more optimal stats are for the character that you're trying to build. But again, you're not really going to be arguing or fighting that too much, because the base stats, even from an SSR to a SR, is definitely it's a gap, right? So you want to make sure that you're just giving yourself the more optimal pieces, at least for those initial things, and then later on starting to fine tune. So you might not want to level this as high right away so that you're able to have that opportunity to be able to swap on and off pieces without feeling like you invested too much into them. Now, the only other thing that you can do, and I want to like include this in the gearing guide, is that if you have a piece that you just are like, hey, I'm done with this piece, I don't need it no more, it's boo-boo, I don't need this crap. Let's get rid of it, right? So let's find a piece that I'm no longer using. So this piece, for example, is disposable. Let's go ahead and lock it. Now, if we go here, go back. We hit this button and we click the sword, you can actually get resources back for that, right? So not only do you get some of the dust back, you do get some gold, and I feel like I might be blocking it. So hold on, let me move myself. Yeah, you do get some gold, you get some dust back, and then you also get this vial here. So those are going to be really important resources that you're going to want to snag. This vial is actually going to be important in the next component of working on your gear. I just haven't unlocked it yet. So yeah, that's going to be something, like I said, I'll mention probably in the advanced gear guide. But for the basic one, just know that if you do invest into a piece, you can get those resources back. It's not like a complete loss. So at least a portion of them. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be that, guys. I hope that this video was able to help you out with giving you a better understanding of how to work with your gear, how gear works, and just essentially what pieces you can invest in. So that's going to be that, guys. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Everyone, stay blessed, and yeah, stay charged up.